Hi, welcome to Metaphysical Perspectives Podcast. We're going to kind of slow roll it in on this episode because we're still fine-tuning the process of streaming the video, and I'm not quite sure of the delays that are happening on YouTube. And hopefully we have that chat open as well. So if someone in the background in chat can maybe let me know as soon as you hear us that the video and everything's going all right. Jalissa Helms is here with me today. So we have actually a special guest. So I'm going to let Jalissa introduce her.
Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. So our special guest today is Alisé Préjéan with Astrology and Healing Arts. So we have a lot of astrological things that have been happening, will happen all the time really, but we'd like someone that has a little bit more input that can help us understand more about what's going on. So welcome, Alisé. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, we're thrilled to have you. And actually we just added our producer, Nancy Hopkins, and you won't see a video on that one either. So we're gonna, let me see if we can, well, looks like we're gonna have an odd video on this live broadcast. So we're gonna see the producer's name, Nancy Hopkins. So welcome, Nancy. And it's just gonna show up on video for this time. So we'll go with the flow, we'll say, on this one.
So actually I had a funny thing happened, not so great, but I believe it was Saturday where I didn't feel sick or anything. I was just exhausted and I could not, I could barely keep my eyes open, and I was like, oh, I don't know why I'm so tired. But it wasn't just I was tired, I was just like beat and just needed to rest. And I'm like, okay, I'll just lay on the couch. And then I ended up falling asleep, and I'd wake up here and there like, oh, I have so much I need to do. And my body was just like, nope, you're still gonna sit here and rest. So I was like, okay. So it was such a lazy day. I felt like I got nothing accomplished. But it wasn't until, was it the next day that I messaged you, Derek? Where I was getting onto Facebook and doing some of our postings for work for Mystical Wares. And I was scrolling through our Mystical Wares Facebook group, and I came across a post that Derek had made like a few days prior about the solar eclipse Facebook group, and I was like, oh my goodness, that was yesterday. That's when I was just taken out energetically. So I guess it was a full moon or a new moon solar eclipse. Is that correct? So do you have any insight on that, Alisé?
Yes, so it was a new moon in Sagittarius, solar eclipse, and that was about around 12 degrees of Sag. And also one of the things that happened recently is Neptune went direct. So that could also be the tiredness, this need to sleep that you were talking about. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. I just pulled you guys up on video so I can see you two now.
I'm doing the same thing, and I've probably got a 30-second delay, so when I see myself, who knows what I'm doing. Yeah, that's fun.
That's what I'm seeing too. There's a delay. It's kind of weird.
It is. It's a little bit off. That's it. We'll get our footing. That's awesome. That makes sense what you were mentioning though about the feeling physiologically, tired and drained or whatnot. Of course, as energies change or fluctuate, so do we. We're in that environment. So we just wanted, get more of your perspective on that, not just the new moon that we just experienced, but really you go wherever you want on everything from, and actually, I think Jalissa and I are both on this one. We want to hear your understanding of not just Mercury retrogrades, but any of the retrogrades as are often brought up in the metaphysical communities and how they can affect us. So if you had any input on that.
Yeah, I feel like retrograde has such a bad rep or people like to use that as an excuse. So could you help us clarify what happens with that? That'd be great.
Yeah, so retrogrades, all of the planets except for the sun and the moon, of course, retrograde. So whenever a planet retrogrades, it's really this cue to go into more of our right brain function. So when the planets are direct, it's more, we're in this left brain function. The retrogrades are right brain function. So it's more energy moving inward, right? And it has to do with whatever planet goes retrograde. So all the different planets are really just different functions of consciousness. And so when they go retrograde, this is really a time to pull our energy inward or pull our consciousness inward and really like tune into our intuitive brain and intuitive function in regards to that planetary energy. A lot of times retrogrades are also referred to as a Uranian component. So it's really, by that, it would be recognizing that these retrogrades are actually more of like a quickening of the understanding or really looking at the information, like I said, for more of a right brain function. So it's a quickening of actually integrating the information that we've been getting when we've been going direct, right? So with Mercury, it's, most people know about Mercury retrograde. So this is really about our communication, our perceptions, you know, how we're moving through the world, because Mercury is this sense of movement through the world. And the retrograde of Mercury retrograde is pulling that energy inward and making sure we're getting all the information, right? But we're coming to a Venus retrograde, so I'll use that as an example of how different it can be from Venus to Mercury, is that when Venus goes retrograde, it's not just really, it's not necessarily just our perceptions and our communication, it's also Venusian themes. So this is our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to our values, our relationship to others. So this is like a retrograde really pulling energy inward to assess the Venusian themes, or the Venusian part of our consciousness, which is, you know, our relationship to ourselves, our body, what our body needs, what we need, and then how that relates to our relating to others, any other in our world.
It sounds like it'd be a good idea for us to be aware when these retrogrades happen, of course, because, you know, they're going to affect all aspects of our life. Is there a, now as far as a retrograde, so is there like a source on the internet that you can go to that'll give you the preset dates for the year coming up and whatnot, and when and where the retrogrades happen, and how long they last?
I mean, you could probably look at any of the planets and just Google, you know, when is Venus retrograde this year? I think Cafe Astrology might be a good site to check to see if they do that. I personally use an ephemeris, so that's how I see it. But you could probably just Google Mercury retrograde for 2021 or 2022, Venus retrograde, Mars retrograde, things like that. But I don't know of a specific site that just lists it all out, although that would be really nice. It'd make it a lot easier.
Yeah, it sure would. Yeah, there's a place called, I think it's spaceweather.com or spaceweather.org. I mean, so we could type that into a search engine too and find it. But that's where I go to get the current happenings on solar flares and eruptions, different things. So I'll have to check that site out too and see if maybe they tie in the retrogrades to that. So it's worth looking at. Do you have any?
Well, you talked a little bit about Venus, and so each planet has its own energy and where we're able to feel it, whether, like you were saying, it was like either our relation to outside people versus a relation to ourselves. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so for example, with Venus retrograde, yes, it is going to be about, you know, our relationships to everyone in the outside world, or anything in the outside world, but that is always ultimately comes back to and refers back to relationship to ourselves. So the Venus retrograde is definitely going to be looking at, you know, first and foremost our relationship to ourselves, and then how that translates in the reflections that we're getting from our relationships. So, you know, everything that's happening on the outside world is really just reflecting back to us was happening on the inside world. And so in this retrograde, that would be always referring back to ourselves, really giving us the opportunity to look at, you know, what is it in my own consciousness, in the own way I relate to myself, in what I'm getting back and receiving back as a reflection in the outside world. Could you repeat your question? I want to make sure I'm addressing it. I want to make sure that I understand the question.
No, that was great, everything you were saying, and I totally, like, we get off and go into something and get off track as well. But no, so each of the planets have a different energy that it has more of an effect on, like a greater effect, like with, I don't know.
You know, all of the personal planets, which would be considered Mercury, Venus, Mars, and then, you know, you start kind of heading out into the outer planet realm. So you're looking at Jupiter, Saturn, but then the outer planets like Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus, you know, as those get further out, and the retrogrades are experienced a little differently. So the personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, we're gonna notice those in our personal lives, like more personally, let's just say, because they are personal planets. They're less of a generational energy, where like Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, those are more generational. By generational, I mean they move very, very slowly. So you have groups of souls or generations that have these planets in specific signs. And so this is really like evolving the collective, even though it is an individual signature in our own charts or our own consciousness, it's also more generational or more society based. So you're looking at the collective actually evolving. And the way I like to describe it is these outer planets are actually, when they're retrograde, they're making more foundational, or they're making changes or evolutions on a more foundation, the foundation of our consciousness. At the foundation of our consciousness is the best way to describe it. So they move slower, and they're noticeable, but they're more subtle too, because they're moving slowly. And whereas Mercury and Mars and Venus are, you know, they're faster moving planets. We're used to them going retrograde a little bit more. So there is a difference in what's going on. And I think that with the outer planets, it's interesting because they're just making big shifts, but like it almost feels more subtle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That is great.
I was actually, very descriptive and made complete sense. I do want to go off topic really quickly. I just put on my glasses, checked in chat, so we're having some mic issues maybe, so I want to say, but you're clearly hearing us okay. Do you only have one device open on your end, Alisé? Meaning, are you just streaming on your cell phone and you don't have an open mic on your computer? Because I don't think you had a computer in front of you, did you?
Actually, I just realized I was on this thing with the Zoom. It's going over the radio clear. Okay, so the Zoom call we're on right now is being simulcast over the radio station with no problem. Apparently, the problem is coming in on the YouTube. So it's something, and if she was having the problem, Derek, I would be hearing it also. So I think it's something that's happening with the YouTube connection.
I'm checking the streaming right now. Excuse me. YouTube is telling me the bit rate's slow. It's lower than the recommended bit rate. It's telling me it's having connection issues. We're still clearly connected. Is it listenable? And anybody else in chat too, if you can chime in, I would appreciate it too. Because maybe Nancy, because the way we're patching all of us in on different ways, maybe you're hearing it okay. So I just want to get some input from maybe Dolly or somebody in chat if I can. but I'm not sure there's much I can do with it from this end. And then I saw a comment on Jalissa, maybe not hearing Jalissa's voice, but her and I are actually sharing a microphone here. So maybe it's a situational thing with the microphone. So I'm just trying to look at all the parts and pieces.
No, I think
Jalissa, I was making a comment because they were hearing it. I wanted to know, are you hearing it when Jalissa's speaking? Because they were thinking it was Alisé. I'm sorry for this problem here, Alisé, because it's just technical stuff. All right. So
they said it's still listenable.
This thing that's happening right now, it's going over the radio station fine. Okay? So that's the only thing I can tell you. It's not Alisé.
So it's just YouTube. Yasmin commented it must just be the YouTube because the radio shows it sounds fine.
Okay. It's just streaming. And sorry, everybody listening and listening to this later or viewing it later. Techie issues, we'll get through it all, but it looks like it is a streaming thing.
Can I bring it back to what Alisé was saying? Because I know that you had some input about the generational and the planets that are further away. And
go ahead and bring it.
No, you, because I know that.
Okay.
Do you have any input on that about
on the planets?
The planetary, the further ones that have more of a generational.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And what Jalissa is alluding to, we had a chat behind the scenes another day or two ago about different things, and that's regarding the planets. So when we talk with Alisé about, not just Mercury retrograde, but whatever planet retrograde, often it's not known, well, for a lot of reasons, because many are invisible, but what I'm getting at here is there are additional planets in our solar system, not just our solar system, all over the place, that are out of frequency with the visual spectrum. So an easy thing for us to wrap our head around would be calling it an infrared planet. And typically we'll say there's aspects of a planet that are in the infrared spectrum. So I'm not saying infrared is what these planets are in. They're in a whole other frequency that maybe we don't have a name for yet. So I'm just going to call them energy planets. And they do have an effect as well. So often, because we're not aware as conscious beings on Earth being affected by these other planets in the solar system, and we're only told, again, depending on what year it is, a certain number of them, there are additional ones that do affect us. So you can kind of think of I guess we'll call it, think of a visualization would be Earth where we're on, in a pond maybe, and then throwing a rock a little bit away, and that centrifugal toroidal shape that's going to hit us has an effect, and then you can keep throwing rocks further out. So what I'm saying is there are planets further out that aren't acknowledged, that you can't even see on the visual spectrum, that have an effect on us. So, I guess for us, good luck on all of us understanding that and prepping for it when we don't even have an acknowledgement of the planets. So one thing to think about is if all of a sudden we feel off and it's not a Mercury or a Venus or whatever retrograde happening, well, there could be other things because we are in an energy environment. So basically what Jalissa was bringing up, because I had acknowledged those unseen or unacknowledged planets before, they do have an effect. So there's lots of objects in our shared reality that affect us, some known and unknown. I don't know if that described it enough, but again, that's a whole other topic for what's seen and unseen out there. And then Alisé, I don't know if in the, and I'm not sure what to maybe loosely call the circles for, I guess what's called astrology. But do they acknowledge, is anyone within that you're aware of, acknowledge any other planetary objects that we're not told about? I'm not sure if that's a known thing or not.
Well, I think it's interesting because the way that astrologers usually talk about that is that when we actually discover new planetary bodies, we're actually the way that that's perceived by astrologers is that the collective is actually ready to integrate that particular function in consciousness. And so when we discover those things, it's this natural expansion of consciousness that we're actually ready for. So I definitely think there's massive planetary objects and other planets that we don't see, that we're not aware of, that I can imagine are affecting us because it's just energy ultimately. And the way I see the planets is they're really just expressing functions of consciousness in our own being, in our own body as well, our own psyche. And I think that we have to be able to integrate specific planetary bodies to a specific evolutionary foundation before we're really ready to integrate the next level, right? So it's like this, we're growing and expanding in consciousness, and so we have to get these foundational aspects integrated in order to be able to take on more and more and more, which is actually really, I find exciting, because it's just this natural evolution of consciousness that's going to happen. And as we're ready, we actually discover them. We actually do have the technology or whatever to be able to discover them, and then find how that actually begins to awaken the collective consciousness in that way. Like one of the planetary bodies I'm thinking of is like Chiron. When Chiron was discovered, all of these new healing modalities started coming out into society. And so now this is like this natural unfoldment, kind of what brought us here to now, in this time where now all of in the last, let's see, 40 years or 50 years, we've been cultivating and developing all these different healing modalities, and that's actually what Chiron is about in our charts and in the skies. Is this, it's called the wounded healer, but it is about really being able to work with areas that we feel a wound, and yet this is the thing that actually helps us to strengthen our own healing capacity and really integrate this continuous sense of renewal, which healing is really just renewal, because we're always actually kind of awakening to something new. And it's often, this could go into a deep conversation for me, but it's often through trauma or woundedness that we are actually awakened to another aspect of humanity, another aspect of our own experience and consciousness, and we become, through the healing process, awakened to bringing those fragments that can happen from the trauma or woundedness of how things were before, the reality we knew before, into this healing that then we actually come back together more strong and more awakened. So with these planetary bodies and different planets that we discover throughout time, I really feel like we won't be able to be aware of that until we're ready. And I definitely I appreciate your perspective on that. There is so many things that are happening that we aren't aware of. I mean, we can track all of these planets and the movements, but then there's still unexpected things that you're like, what's going on in my chart? What's going on with me today? Something feels off. What is it? Is it Neptune going direct, or why is it affecting me days later or instead of that day, or whatever? And that's the thing, is that there is so much energetically, we're just swimming in energy, really. And I think that over time, though, we become more and more aware and are able to track it and integrate what's happening, which is why I love following the planetary transits.
Oh, I bet it's probably a full-time job following the transits and everything going on up there. I mean, there's so much to pay attention to, and typically in the news, we hear about in fact, we can get into that if you want to, the blood moons, the blue moons, the different ones, what those, and that's if you're have some input on that you want to share. And then Jalissa, I don't know if there's something you wanted to.
Well, yeah, you're talking about birth charts, so can we go a little bit into that? Because I think most people have probably heard of their sun rising, their moon rising, is that a thing? I don't know. Or
I don't
their
know.
sun sign, their moon sign, that's what it is. And then, you know, so can you describe some of those? Because obviously I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people are familiar with their sun sign and their moon sign, and then their rising sign, which is what you're thinking of, is the sign that was on the horizon and rising when you were born, right? The moment that you were born. A lot of people know about those particular placements, and then some people don't too. Some people only know their sun sign. And it's fascinating because I am amazed at how many people don't really realize that even though the sun and the moon and the rising sign are very important, because they are very personal placements in the birth chart, there's all these other planetary bodies in your birth chart, because all the planets were positioned in a specific place in the sky. And so there's a specific energetic imprint that happens when you're born. It's like a psychic imprint. So your birth chart is really like a snapshot of these planetary energies in your own psyche. You know, it's really fascinating to look at the birth chart, because it is ultimately expressing this quality of energy that you're carrying with you throughout your life. And what's fascinating too is you might have the exact same birth time, birth date, birthplace as, well, you do, you know, we all do have the same birth time, date, place as many other people, but the way our lives unfold is very different. But it's interesting because it's the same planetary functions, right? Even the same houses, and the houses are just what aspect of life these planets are being applied to. This energy and this function of consciousness is being applied to. So they could even have it in the same house, but it still will unfold in a very unique way, which just shows that we all have a very unique relationship to these planetary energies, a unique way of utilizing the energy that we actually have, and the way that we relate to our own energy, our own psyche, and our, you know, ultimately the solar system that we find ourselves in. So we all have a very unique relationship to it, which is why you can have one person with the same exact chart and their life will unfold in a very unique way. They're utilizing those energies in their own personal way. And I do believe it's very likely we live many lifetimes. It's infinite, it's eternal. And so I do also think that part of this has to do with that we come in with imprinted like cellular memories, right? Or energetic memories, which then become cellular memories. And so there's also this karmic component to it. And by karma, I don't mean like good karma or bad karma. It's just information within the soul energy, or this energetic imprint that we come in with, that is in this constant unfoldment of really ultimately evolving consciousness within ourselves, right? And also within the collective. So we're like energy processors in the way I see it. And so this can also play a part as well. There's going to be karmic imprints or energetic imprints that are already there that we're processing and really kind of picking up where we left off. That's the way that I've been taught by my astrology teacher, is that, and I personally do feel that it's very likely that we live many lifetimes. But I always, you know, no one can know, like no one can be totally sure. So I always want to give that opening that, you know, maybe not everybody resonates with that idea. And if that's the case, ultimately it's like there's this energetic imprint there. And the way that we're actually are relating to it, that really is determining how these energies are unfolding in our own consciousness and our own life. So the birth chart is really like, it's multi-layered, it's multi-dimensional. I've been studying my own chart since 2010, like every day, watching the transits, looking at things, talking with other astrologers, I've had many astrology readings, and I also have another astrologer friend who's very, very close friend. We've been getting together at least once a month, if not more, and really we talk for like 8 hours at a time, really just analyzing our charts, analyzing what's coming up with the transits, what's coming up in the outer world, seeing how this actually works. And this is the thing, is I still discover new things about my chart. So it's this multi-layered and multi-dimensional energy in the chart. And I find it fascinating because you really get the opportunity to understand your own consciousness when you're actually following, not only understanding your own chart, but you're also following the transits and getting the opportunity to see how these energies present themselves to you, because we're always getting an opportunity to get to the next level in these planetary functions. So this is also why different people can have the same chart, but actually the opportunities presented to them are how they're harnessing that opportunity, or if they're actually responding through habit. It'll keep us at different levels of being able to process the energy, right? So the chart is just, it's vast. It's so multidimensional, and it's so much more than most people really know. And this is why it is so exciting for me to share this with people, because it is the most potent evolutionary tool I've ever found. So it's so neat because you can see where the current planets are now. So we call that planetary transits, right? How it's actually aspecting your personal chart. So, you know, is it contacting specific planets? And what aspect of life is it? It's the house, right? And then you can actually see how it's like right on every time. It's valid every time. You're like, oh my God, there's some Venus retrograde. Look, this past relationship came into my life. And, you know, Venus is in Capricorn. Capricorn's all about the past. So like past relationships or past energies, past experiences, past patterns are coming up. And if I can see it, I can actually figure out how I want to work with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
In order to actually up-level my relationships, in order to actually really begin to be able to attract the relationships I desire. Because Venus, for example, just using this as an example, Venus is actually how we attract things to us. It's literally our magnetism. It's our inner vibration of what we love, how we love, who we love, right? Our own sense of self-love. So we attract from that place. And so, you know, there's so much to astrology that can actually be tools that's much more than the sun, moon, and the rising. And those placements are very important. You know, the sun is what you're cultivating in this lifetime. And, you know, I'll just say that I find that people, you know, sometimes are turned off by astrology because they're like, my sun is in this sign and I don't relate. You know, I read these sun sign horoscopes and it's not describing my experience. There are some sun sign horoscopes that are incredible and they're right on and, you know, they're really good. But it takes a very, very well-versed expertise to be able to write sun sign horoscopes in that way, because you've got all these other planets that are actually aspecting, you know, could be aspecting your sun in your chart, so it's going to flavor it differently, right? But also, by the way, you're cultivating this sun in this lifetime, so it's something that you're growing into and you're evolving, you're growing throughout your life, whereas a lot of people think that the sun is just what they already are. And yes, on a certain level, yes, this is your contribution of light, but it's something that's expanding and growing, and you're getting more and more well-versed, whereas the rising sign is actually more instinctual. It's something you know, you do it, it's instinct every time. This is how you, without forethought, act. And so often people think that, you know, whatever your rising sign is, they think that oh, if your rising's in Cancer, it's like, oh, I bet it's a Cancer sun, but not necessarily, because it's this is our instinct. It's actually more cultivated on a certain level instinctually than the sun is. The sun is growing over time. And then the moon is the internal world, so how we're internalizing our experiences, and it's subjective. But, we are so much more than those signs. And if we have other planets that are actually aspecting, meaning making mathematical configurations, the way we measure energy, it's mathematical, right? And so in the chart, it's mathematical. So the way that other planets are contacting in a like a position in the sky, right? Position within our own psyche. It's going to have this like mathematical component, which we call the phases and aspects. So if you have a planet that's aspecting your sun, or aspecting your moon, or aspecting your ascendant, it's going to flavor it in a different way. So there's just so much going on in the chart that is so much more than those three placements. Although most people do know those placements, understandably so, but there's just a lot to it, more than just knowing the sign. It's also knowing the house that those planets are in or placements are in as well.
Yeah, that's a lot of great information. Oh my gosh, thank you. Did you have anything that you wanted to ask, Derek? Or
I wanted to add in a little bit. I actually liked your description of a lot of that, and how the planets in our solar system affect the energies and the makeup of the vehicle. So when you were actually describing some of that, Alisé, I was thinking, what a good analogy would be. Think a race car driver, an entity coming into this reality, and then that vehicle, the race car coming in, well, it's going to have certain aspects, certain tires, certain gear shifting for the reality it got entered into. And I was kind of thinking about the racetrack, of course, the solar system, and how if you're not aware of the whole track or all the planets or aspects of your vehicle, there's somewhere you can break into. But really, I was just kind of thinking about how, depending, like you mentioned, where the planets are aligned, the frequencies and energies they're putting out, or think of in the analogy, the available tires for your car at the time will affect your reality that you're experiencing, but not the driver. So we're still a race car driver in a vehicle. So that's what kind of ties in how you were saying. Some people can have the same star charts, birth charts, different ways of being described, but yet have totally different outcomes. Well, yeah, put a really good race car driver in a VW Bug against something, he's still going to do pretty darn well, or she. So that's the whole separation of the entity and the vehicle or body. But having the greater understanding that all of that does affect, know the race car you're in, and you're going to handle it a whole lot better. So just kind of tied in an odd analogy there, but no, I appreciate how you put that out.
Mm-hmm. And to even consider, so these are just the planets that are known in the birth chart. So all those unknowns that haven't been awakened yet, and how that will affect us. I guess not until that person's ready, though, right? But we did have a question from one of our listeners, Tort. So say someone did have multiple lives, so how would that affect the birth chart? So that they would just have more aspects of themselves. I'm not sure how to word that.
So it sounds like the question is, if we do have multiple lives, how does that affect the birth chart?
Yes.
Right. Well, so that would be a signature that would be the placement by a house and sign of Pluto, because Pluto is the archetypal energy that is related to our soul. And it's really looking at where the soul, it's the placement that shows the reason for incarnation. And we know that because Pluto rules Scorpio, or guides Scorpio. I really like to call the rulers guides, so you might hear me say guides or rulers. And in Scorpio, it sits across from Taurus, the first earth sign of the wheel of consciousness, or the zodiac. And so Taurus is, being the first earth sign, it is the body. It's our, whatever our needs are for our body, right? It's also our sense of self-love. and what we value, right? And Pluto, which sits across from Taurus, is, you know, as I said, guide to Scorpio, and this is the unconscious. So it's what is in the unconscious. And we could also say this is an automatic pilot, right? So it's our unconscious that really drives our incarnation. And so when you look at the chart, you can see where Pluto is by house and sign, and you can see that there is the way that I've been taught is that it's really ultimately where the soul is desiring to experience itself and experience true empowerment. And so, and yet it's also where the soul has experienced losses of empowerment in over lifetimes. So it's an interesting piece because there's always a flip side to these energies. So with Pluto, it's where we actually naturally hold power, and it is our power, it's our life force energy, it's our unconscious, it's our soul, but it's also where the soul has experienced losses of power, and it is here to actually cultivate that empowerment, true empowerment. So it's this exploration by house and sign of this Plutonian energy, which is the soul energy. And so that is a good indicator on really where the soul is wanting to evolve. The way I see Pluto is like that placement, it doesn't necessarily show the entirety of your soul. It's showing like a cluster of lifetimes, potentially, of experience that the soul is now in this incarnation focusing on in order to actually really embody. I almost think of it as like downloading like into the energetic, into the like computer, but I think of it as like energy, our own soul energy, which never goes away. It's like we're here consuming consciousness, right? And in that, we naturally evolve. And so it's in there, it's downloaded. So we're here to resolve any losses of power to completely, really, truly empower us. By house and sign, this is what it shows, you know? So like if you had Pluto in the sign of Libra, this is a soul that has been over lifetimes and is now desiring to experience its own evolutionary trajectory and its own empowerment through experiencing what we would see as regenerating energy through relationship, and then also what is debilitating energy in relationship. So we have to actually experience the spectrum in order to truly master it, right? In order to truly like understand or download what true empowerment in that sign of Libra, for example, as that being the placement, is, right? And so it's like, even though we might experience losses of power, I just want to say this because, you know, I want to make sure it's a thorough explanation that why would we experience losses of power or loss of soul, right? Or soul loss, as some people know of that term, right? It's so that we actually really completely encompass that archetypal energy and the empowerment that comes from there. Now, another like signature in the chart that would show other lifetimes is the Saturn placement by house and sign. Saturn shows where we have karma, where we've actually inherited familial karma. So Saturn is the archetypal energy that's associated with the family or the tribe, the first, you know, tribe that we experience. And so this is inherited. We've inherited this karma. So it's just, and I always think of karma is just things that it's a commitment, right? It's energy that we've committed to over and over and over and over again. So we actually develop karma, like there's a result to it. And so wherever the Saturn placement is, it's going to show what we've been committed to, what we've been actually mastering over lifetimes. And so that is another placement that shows past lifetime signatures and where you're carrying it into this lifetime through these energetic placements. what I've heard some astrologers describe it this way, and I think it's a really fascinating way to describe it, is that when we incarnate, we literally pass through every one of these planetary energies, and through that, the soul passing through all of these energies, or our being passing through these energies, our spirit, our soul, that we're picking up these energies from these different planetary energies. We're passing through them, and we're naturally going to just attract like these specific energies, which is a representation of how like our soul is interpreting them, like understanding them, and then also coming onto the dense plane, onto the third dimension, onto Earth, in order to really, you know, the way I see it, like very, very slowly, like look at this particular consciousness. We don't actually have these placements unless there was a reason for us to actually desire to really slow down and like look at it very, very slowly in third dimensional awareness. Because it's through that we're actually getting this opportunity to really download it and really master consciousness. And so we carry this from lifetime to lifetime.
Okay.
So no, it's just interesting to be able to look at it as our physical body, our vehicle when it was in production or when it was created, and then to have the soul level and how they all intermingle, and if we're willing and open to let or stop the brain from thinking so much, overthinking, to allow our soul to, I don't know, do its purpose. What do you think?
No, I agree. There's lots of ways, excuse me, for all of us to talk about this. That's why it's so great having Alisé on here from her perspective and all of that, and the planetary alignments, and just, again, all of it. We're, another way is we're in an active cooking kettle or pot full of soup that's continually moving. So it's not even a set thing, because, of course, we came in these vehicles or bodies, like she's describing, with, predetermined aspects or options, but that doesn't mean that the driver in the vehicle is taking advantage of those options or using them enough to maybe heighten them or put more energy toward them. If we're talking about, again, in this odd analogy of a vehicle and stuff, we're talking about chakras or abilities, understandings, put some energy or understanding towards there, and then you'll boost that option in your vehicle and become more intuitive or more empathic or things like that. So that's why we have special guests on like this, so that we can all, again, look at different aspects and realize, well, wait, there's not just a one way, and it's not a cookie cutter universe. There's a whole lot of ways of perceiving this. So that's great. And I do want to ask you a question too. You'd mentioned Cryon. I think you pronounced it Cryon earlier. Was that a planet you were referencing, Alisé?
Chiron?
How did you say it?
Chiron.
Chiron. Okay. And is that, can you expand on that a little bit for me? Because I'm not sure that I had heard that term before.
Oh, wow, you haven't heard of Chiron.
I don't get on the internet or the news too much, so no, it's to follow what's going on. But I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I think it's considered a dwarf planet.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a placement that is, as I said, it's called the wounded healer. So in the natal chart, where it is by house and sign can show where someone attracts a specific theme of wound, right? So I'll just share with you, like right now, Chiron's in Aries. And in my natal chart, I have Chiron in Aries. So I can tell you from my own experience what Chiron in Aries is, and experiencing that in the natal chart throughout my life, but also the way that the collective is experiencing it right now as well, as that it's transiting Aries. So like the placement of Chiron in Aries would be a wound to the identity. And because Chiron is in Aries, this means there's some kind of a wound to the Mars energy. So where your Chiron is placed in your natal chart is going to show what sign or archetypal energy that you naturally attract a specific wound, and the planetary energy that guides that sign will show you this planetary function that you can work with in order to heal, right? Because it's where we experience the wound that we actually, the way I see Chiron placed in the chart is that, and the way that Chiron is just that it's a wound that it's like it keeps on coming back. So you heal it in one way, and then it'll come up in a different way. And so you have to find another way of actually working with the wound, because now, even though you healed it in this way, now it comes up, it like morphs into another theme. It's the same theme, but a different circumstance or different situation that then you actually have to figure out how to heal from, how to work with. But this is the thing, is you actually become the natural healer. And so as you're working with this wound that seems to just kind of like complete itself, and then it comes up in a different way, and you complete it and then it comes up in a different way, then you become this just natural healer of that energy and that vibration. So people that have Chiron in Aries, for example, have experienced a wound to their own Mars energy, which is really, Mars is about acting on our own behalf, acting on our own desires, acting on our own needs and what we need instinctually. And so this is, if you can't actually, if you've had a wound to acting on behalf of your own desires, your own needs, and, your own self, this is naturally going to affect your identity, how you relate to yourself. So there's this wound to the identity that one has to actually learn how to master. And that you actually then, as you do heal, you're actually literally changing signatures in your own vibration. And then you become just this natural healer and healing vibration that gives off an energy that others perceive as, it's okay to be me. It's okay to act on my own behalf. It's okay to act instinctually based on my own desires and my own needs. And so people that have that placement, Chiron and Aries, will eventually come to actually really harness their Mars energy through challenge. Through that challenge and this constant challenge throughout their life, where then they become very comfortable with acting on their own behalf and acting upon their own needs. And so much so that others perceive that, wow, I can be me. Like, I can be me around this person. I feel safe because I can sense this energy that is just okay to act on behalf of my own needs. And that's safe for me. And so people will naturally and unconsciously pick that up. So that's how Chiron can work in the chart and throughout life, right? It's a repetitive wound. It doesn't really go away, but it is actually the exercise that we all get in order to actually embody a healing energy for the collective in a specific sign and planetary energy. And then, right now Chiron's in Aries. So people that have the Chiron in Aries in their natal charts are coming up to, or if that haven't already had, their Chiron return, which is a very interesting and kind of exciting time in your life. The Chiron return is usually around 51 years old, and it actually is where you've actually been very exercised in this healing work. If you haven't been exercising your healing work, then likely the wound will come back in a bigger form in order to make sure that you do that work. And so, but if you have been doing the healing work, then by the time you're coming into your Chiron return, it doesn't mean that there won't be some residual energies of the wound, and maybe even in a new way, but you're actually so masterful at working with the wound that you really come into this healing vibration for the collective. With Chiron going through Aries by transit for everyone, this is really the decisions we're making right now. We want to be making on our own personal desires, Mars. And this is the thing, Mars is an instinctual energy. It's the instinct for us to act on our own needs and on behalf of ourselves. And it's the conscious, I want to make sure I describe this correctly. It's related to Pluto. Okay, so Mars and Pluto guide Scorpio energy. So this is the soul. This is the guide. These are the guides to the unconscious drive to even be incarnated, right? The reasoning where the soul's wanting to evolve. Mars acts on behalf of Pluto, which is unconscious. So Pluto's the feminine aspect of Scorpio. Mars is the masculine side of Scorpio. So Mars is always acting on behalf of the unconscious. So this is why Mars is instinct. It's instinct to act on our own behalf for our own survival needs. And, so it is our primal, it's connected to our primal instincts to survive and thrive and evolve. And so Mars is that instinctual energy to actually act on behalf of what those needs are and our desires. So because in that, we're actually evolving, we're acting on behalf of our own personal evolution. So this is where, with Chiron transiting through Aries right now, it's really important to act on behalf of your own needs and your own desires and your own evolution. And if we actually were to not act on behalf of that, say we were going to be like, well, I'm not going to act on my own needs because somebody else needs me to whatever it is. Or I feel this pressure in the outside world that I've got to be this thing for someone else or do this thing for someone else. I'm not saying that we aren't, interacting with each other and supporting each other, but I am saying that we have to really understand that ultimately our first and foremost obligation is to our own evolution. And we do have to actually act on our own behalf. And if we do not act on behalf of our own evolution, we can create a wound to our own identity. So if we make choices based on other people's beliefs, other people's role they want us to play in their lives or whatever, and we're actually not paying attention or not honoring our own needs and our own desires and our own evolutionary trajectory, we can actually be creating a wound to our identity, a wound to understanding what our own personal needs are. So wherever Chiron's transiting, this is where we can either, really affect our next level healing, or we can actually create a wound for ourselves.
Yeah, that's great information. Thank you so much for sharing about Chiron, because I wasn't familiar with that either. But so what's up with that book that men are from Mars and women are from Venus? Do you have a little input on that? So talking about, the planets and their purpose or their energies. So what does that mean?
Yeah, well, I've never read that book. I've heard that book so many times. I kind of can't believe I've never read it. But Mars is the masculine. So, we all have Mars. If you're female, you have a masculine energy, right? And this is the Mars placement. It's shown by the Mars placement in your natal chart. So this is the instinct. It's a yang energy. So this is our instinct to go out into the world and to act on our own behalf and our own evolution. As I said, it's just that masculine energy, instinct to act on behalf of our own evolution. Venus is the feminine energy, so it's our feminine energy. So, even if you're a man, you have Venus in your chart, so you have this feminine energy. This is the yin energy, so where Mars is yang, feminine is yin. And Mars and Venus, the yin and the yang are always moving together in tandem, yin and yang, to actually evolve, move consciousness. Both of them are very, very, very connected to Pluto, the unconscious. And the reason I say that is because in the natural wheel of consciousness, as I said, you have the first earth sign, which is Taurus. This is the yin form of Venus, energy moving inward. What do I need? What does my body need in order to survive? On the opposite spoke of that wheel, right, is Scorpio, Pluto, and also Mars, because Mars is the ancient guide or ruler to Scorpio. Now, also just understand too, the first sign of the zodiac is Aries, it's ruled by Mars. It's that instinct to come out of the Piscean waters, right? The ocean of consciousness, or spirit, or, you know, our, the divine, right? God, goddess, source energy. Aries is like, it's the first sign of the zodiac. It's fire, and it's guided by Mars. This is the coming out of the ocean of consciousness, and is like, I exist, I am, you know. And by the way, its opposite wheel of its opposite spoke on that wheel of consciousness is Libra. I am, and you are, we are, right? Libra is the archetypal energy of relating and relationship. So we're always, you know, I am in relation to whatever is in the outside world. This is Aries, Libra, Mars, Venus, right? Venus in its rulership of Libra is a yang form of Venus. And so you can see how Mars and Venus are ultimately connected to our own evolution, the masculine, yang, our instinct to actually come out into the world, you know, and be. And then feminine energy is, we do that, we act, and then we draw our energy inward and go, okay, now what are my needs? Now, you know, this is the feminine, like the receptive piece of our consciousness that's actually pulling in and assessing, are my needs being met? Are my values being met? Am I loving, you know, myself and what I need in order to, you know, go back out there with our Mars energy and evolve and continue? It's like this continuous yin yang energy where we're evolving. So I don't know about that book, but you know, it's natural, especially in this era, I feel, to associate Mars with the masculine, right? It is the masculine. So men are from Mars, women are from Venus, but I think that it's like, this is kind of getting into the gender roles that we're coming to understand more and more and evolve more and more. So I just want to share that, you know, ultimately, no matter what your gender is, you're going to have, you know, a Mars and Venus, and there are some women that are going to be more masculine. There are some women that are very, you know, very connected to their Mars energy. You know, they might actually feel more comfortable or practiced with their masculine energy, and then vice versa. There are some men, you know, that are more comfortable more practiced with their yin energy. So it's not necessarily related to gender, but because ultimately we all have masculine and feminine, we all have Mars and Venus, and we all do have to actually work with it. It's just, we also want to balance it so that, you know, when we have a balanced Mars and Venus energy, yang and yin, you can imagine then the wheels are turning. And they're turning quickly because there's no lopsidedness, right? So the more that we're really looking at this Mars and Venus energy that are working together and in balance, the more evolutionary trajectory we're going to have.
Wow, we are so simply complicated.
That's a good way of putting it. Did you, since we're kind of right around the midpoint, Alisé, did you, and I've got a graphic I can put up if we all want to take like a 3 or 4 minute break sort of thing. Okay, so what we'll do, because, and again, for those viewers and listeners, because we are still working out the techie aspects of this, and us broadcasting from our office, it's going to be a little glitchy. So what I'm going to do right now is we're just going to all mute our mics, and I'm going to put up a graphic, and I don't know if an audio is going to play in the background or not. And just take 3 or 4 minutes break, and then we'll remove the graphic here in just a few moments, and then just kind of roll right back into the chat, if that's all right.
If you keep Zoom open, I should be able to play a tune through this.
I thought you might be doing that, Nancy, in the background, so I will do that. And yeah, no, so go ahead and just start any time, and then again, once the song's over, we'll just all start chit-chatting again, and we'll make this smooth a transition in the future. But we're all just having a comfortable chat, so I think it's good. And you can go anytime, Nancy.
Okay, this is Gary Allen, Every Storm, and it's 3 minutes and 45 seconds, so it's a good one for a break.
Okay, and I will be blocking the videos, but we'll be right back as well. Let's do. So I think our audio's down. I'm not sure, but what I'm going to do is put that image up. So we're still on video, of course. So that should be seen. We'll just assume we have open mic still.
Okay, you're back, I think.
So Derek is not back yet. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but he'll be right back to change over the screen, and we will get started. So thank you.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, we're back. I don't know where they are.
Okay.
We're on Zoom and we're back.
We are here. Can you guys hear us?
Okay, yes, we can. All right.
And hopefully video's all back as well. Again, we're catching our footing over here, so sorry about the delays and the not normal breaks here as far as graphics and whatnot. But I'm guessing you hear us now, Nancy, right?
Yes, you're clear.
So, Jalissa, did you have any questions for Alisé you wanted to ask?
No, it's just so interesting how, well, there's so much that makes us us. So not just the physical vehicle with our moms and our dads, but then the planetary alignments and how it all affects us. But, you know, there actually was some comments earlier that I missed. So for those of you joining us that might have missed out from the beginning, I talked about how I believe it was Saturday, December 4th, there was a solar eclipse, new moon. Did I say that right? But anyways, I was wiped out energetically. I just could not get myself up. I just needed to lay down and like was in and out of sleeping most of the day. And I'm like, what's going on energetically? I don't know. It was a great lazy day. Like, I guess I really needed it. But so there are some comments earlier that, let's see. So Jalissa isn't the only one. I've been getting hit with stuff too. I actually was awakened in the middle of the night last week with something trying to get in. I just calmed myself down and used intention to settle down the energies, and I felt better within minutes and went back to sleep. So that was Yasmin West that commented earlier. And then Sam Squatch said that all light workers are being targeted. So do you have any input from that, Derek?
Actually, on the last comment about all light workers being targeted, I'd like to make a comment on that, saying, so I would think of that less as maybe, because when we say targeted, we think, oh, you've been identified, we're pointing something at you or this, that, and the other. And so when we reference what we're loosely calling light workers here, those individuals becoming more aware of their reality, kind of same difference there. Not in everybody's understanding. We'll run with that one. So becoming more of their reality, where you're getting into other frequencies or energies, so you're going to start to perceive them more, so it's going to feel like an attack or something like that. So again, if we maybe stay out of the understandings or descriptions of attacks, needing protection, and see it as, oh, we're in expanded energies, we need to just get aligned with them and expand into them, then we don't see it as a negative aspect, or there's a harmful push, or there's a bad guy out there somewhere trying to get us because we've activated chakra, this, that, and the other chakra. I'd see it more as expanding, and maybe you're working out for the first time, so your etheric muscles, as you expand into new ones that you found, that you realized you already have or had, it can kind of cramp up, but keep working out, keep working that muscle, use your chakras, your empathic abilities, intuitions, and then you'll even out. So again, I'm trying to remove the aspect of thinking, oh, you're becoming aware, the bad guys are coming to get you, because then that's a whole nother level of 3D drama or energy that you don't need on your playlist of love songs. Just expand, realize, and you can think of it as maybe energy detox. That's another way of looking at it, kind of thing. And then you become more empowered and you get into your etheric armoring. So the bad guys that are out there, I'm just kind of having fun with the bad guys term, of course, don't have such an effect on you. You realize you have your muscles, you've worked them out. So now you can experience your reality from a heightened or expanded perspective, not just your five senses, but your chakras as senses as well. So that more negative aspects don't affect you as well. So again, everything's perception. If you come at it the right way, without that negative or edge to it, then you can expand into it more easily. And I'm guessing that probably ties into a lot of what Alisé is talking about too on energies and planetary alignment. Don't fight it, because what are you going to do? Stop Mercury from going retrograde? Good luck with that one. So you might as well expand your understanding and be aware of it, and then again get your sea legs or footing and realize you're in those heightened energies. So maybe don't, and Alisé, you can expand into this, so maybe the retrograde aspects are times that we would maybe not, and I don't know, so you help me out. Maybe those are moments or times in our reality we don't want to make those big life-changing decisions because everything's in flux. Or is it the opposite? What's your intake on that?
I think that all retrogrades, as I said before, are yin energy. So it is really this natural cycle for our consciousness to move inward and really actually be more self-reflective and more looking at things from a different angle. So typically astrologers will say, don't make major decisions on Mercury retrograde or even retrogrades in general, you know, for any of the planets, or I'd say personal planets, less so with like the outer planet retrogrades. But there is this element that we're all in our own natural cycle as well. There are some times that we have to make big choices during Mercury retrograde. And it, you know, we don't want to impose that that's always going to mean it's going to be a bad decision, because that's not necessarily the case, because we're on bigger cycles. You know, the retrograde could be actually, you know, you could have been thinking, oh, I'm not going to do this thing while it was direct. And then Mercury retrograde has you naturally starting to see it from a different angle and realize, oh, I'm actually going to change my mind. I am going to do it. That's part of the retrograde. So it's not necessarily cut and dry. You know, don't ever make a decision or a big decision on retrogrades, but also recognize that it is a natural cycle to look at things in a different way, to be able to see from a different angle than we were used to seeing before, or feeling or perceiving, however, whatever planet is that's retrograde. So, and I also love the way that you described that, you know, often we're coming into these awakenings. And so one of the things that really came to me, I'll just say even this morning, is that the universe is really always wanting to support us. We are a part of the universe. Therefore, it's natural that we're going to be supported. It's just, it is. The universe, we are it. So therefore, of course, it's naturally wanting to support us, but I think it's our thinking that can block our perception of what support is, because sometimes support doesn't look the way we think it's going to look. And so when we actually keep remembering that maybe this is happening, but I don't understand it, it's awakening me to something, and I'm actually becoming more aware of energy so that I can strengthen my vibration and strengthen my capacities. And so I just wanted to comment on that, Derek, because I love the way you described that, where recognizing that, you know, when we feel like something is coming in at us that we're not, you know, maybe comfortable with, or that feels like it's an attack, that actually it may be feeling that way out of perception, but it's just actually like exposing something new that, you know, we weren't aware of, that is now, you know, maybe it is having us strengthen our capacities in new ways and strengthen us. And therefore, even that is supportive, because we're actually strengthening our own vibration. We're actually becoming aware of something that we didn't know before. And we're awakening to new energies, or we're awakening to new influences in our environment that might seem, you know, like something that is not supportive, but actually flipping that and realizing, but no matter what, I can strengthen my vibration in the way I look at this, and know that, you know, this is me getting to my next level of awakening, me getting to my next level of strengthening my own vibration, you know, and making choices on, you know, what does enter my field and what doesn't. And it always, I think, is a choice.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sorry I missed a little bit of what was said, but I wanted to bring it back a little bit. So, Derek, we've been talking about a new class, and you had actually mentioned a little bit about it. But when I had that moment or that day where I just needed rest, some people might have looked at it as being attacked, but no, I felt like that was actually maybe in a way keeping me safe. Like, oh, just stay home, just rest, because maybe there was stuff going on and I didn't need to deal with it. So it's like, okay. So instead of it like feeling attacked, because I didn't feel that way at all, but just needed to rest, and maybe that would be, you know, I'd be getting my upgrades or downloads at that time, however you want to call that. But you had said something about entities, and so that'll be something that we'll be getting into in the near future for classes here at Mystical Wares, talking about different entities. And I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Okay. Sure. Yeah, so what we're talking about is different levels of entities too. And actually this ties in everything we're talking about, not just planetary alignments, but different frequencies or channels or again, I like to use the analogy of our body being an FM radio, let's say, and your chakras being the dials. The more energy or tuning you put on a particular chakra, be it your heart chakra or third eye or whatever it is, the different levels of perception you're going to pick up in this reality. So yeah, put some imagination or just focused energy, and there's 1,000 ways of doing that, and really it's just thinking about it is the way to start, and that can be your pineal gland, third eye, and you'll heighten in that sense of perception, then you'll get some, again, what psychic or intuitive input, or your heart chakra. But on the entities, that's true. So as you heighten those levels of perception, your chakra, so then you become more of an energy sensitive, so you feel those subtle energies or not so subtle energies in our environment, the weird whooshes, little tingles from nowhere, or the tinnitus-like symptoms. Well, there are, and what Jalissa was actually talking about is where there are other entities, of course, that we don't perceive. Well, they're on those channels sometimes. So that's what we're going to basically expand into a class here at Mystical Wares, and hopefully record that one for online sharing here on Metaphysical Perspectives podcast, and or do a special airing of it, and talk about that, the different, again, entities and or frequencies that we get into in our environment. Just because we don't see some of these things, be it the certain planets out there, and we, good luck on seeing energies, most of us don't, and or some of these entities on the different levels. But that doesn't mean they don't have an effect on us. And they definitely do, just like, of course, the planets that we keep talking about, they have an effect on us. And unless it's nighttime or you have a telescope or something, you usually can't get a visual on it, the planets, but they have an effect on you. Same thing as these entities. So that's why we're going to cover all aspects and talk about all these levels of our reality that do affect us. I don't know if...
Well, there was a comment in chat. So earlier you might have missed Alisé on Shungite reality. So we talked a little bit about cell towers going up in smart cities, smart grids. Well, person in our chat room through Mystical Wares commented, lately whenever I drive by towers, I've been smiling and finding amazing beauty in them, like they're giant flowers, and I imagine great positive healing energy exuding from them, hoping I can help shift the frequencies for more benefit and less harm. Of course, Shungite is great too. So yeah, that is such a great idea, and play around with it, do it, because it does have an effect. And we actually have what's called a Shungite Grid Kit. So I even went around my neighborhood and took these little, they're like thumbtacks with little tiny piece of Shungite rubber, and put them around all like the utility poles. Well, I put them around, like on my fence around my property, but it was mainly because I was looking at all these towers going up, and then we have a substation not too far from our home, and I wanted to have a positive effect on those things, because I know that, I think we all are aware that those frequencies aren't beneficial or healthy for us. So yeah, let's try to make a difference when we can.
Absolutely. It's kind of like, some energy, one love song can change everything. And so think it was a love song, that person putting out the intention around the 5G towers or whatnot. So we all have an effect. We all share this environment. And it's, it's definitely worth remembering. So actually, Alisé, I have a question too. Are there, and I might be catching you off guard here, but it's on the, and again, this is kind of limited to this time frame here, but what's coming up in the near future on the planetary alignments and whatnot that maybe we might want to look at from a positive way, or something to maybe be aware of, because maybe the heavy energies are coming in and we need to know that as well. So is there any tips, tricks, alerts, things you want to make known right now on?
Yeah, there is a lot coming up. For the month of December, so we're already in what's called a pre-shadow, so we're in the Venus retrograde pre-shadow. And whenever astrologers talk about pre-shadow phase of a retrograde, it means that the planet's covering the degrees that it will cover when it goes retrograde. So it can really bring in the circumstances that, for us personally, individually, as well as collectively, on the themes that we'll be working with during the retrograde. So Venus is in its pre-shadow. It actually went into its pre-shadow on November 19th on the eclipse that was in Taurus. That was a full moon eclipse. And, you know, by the way, this is kind of a new trajectory that is now beginning, because the eclipse seasons have been in Gemini, Sagittarius, axes of consciousness. So these themes in our lives for the last 18 months or so. And what's happening now is there's a weaving in of what's coming, which is our focus of consciousness is really going to be on Taurus and Scorpio, because the nodes of the moon are going to move into Taurus and Scorpio on January 19th of 2022. And this will begin an 18-month cycle where individually and collectively, we're really actually emotionally focused on Taurus and Scorpio themes. So this really kind of set this off when we had that November 19th full moon eclipse in Taurus. And by the way, Taurus is guided or ruled by Venus. And so this pre-shadow phase that's happening right now since that eclipse is really likely having us look at or notice these Venusian themes. So this is relationship to ourselves, relationship to others, relating patterns, our resources, what we value, what we love, finances, and, you know, who we love, how we love, what we love, those things, right? It can be, you know, how we magnetize things to us. This is all coming up likely for everyone in the pre-shadow phase. Then on December 19th, Mercury goes retrograde, and Mercury will be, I mean, did I say Mercury? I meant Venus. Venus will go retrograde. Venus will go retrograde on December 19th. And then it goes direct January 29th. And so the nodes move, right, on January 19th. And then Venus, which will then be the guide or ruler to the north node of the moon, Taurus, will go direct on January 29th. And this is pretty big, because if, you know, I'm sure, you know, whether you know astrology or not, if you've been following trends, this will kind of give the understanding of like how these things work, is that since the nodes of the moon have been in Gemini and Sagittarius for the last 18 months or so, this is the axis of consciousness that is really about truth versus lies. You know, what is true, what is not true, you know, whether that's true in our, you know, whether that's in our personal lives, like what's true, what's now not true for me, what's true in the outer world, what's not true, what is truth and what is lies that are going on out there, things like that. The focus is going to change in January, where it's going to be really about what do I value, what do I love, how do I manage my resources, and you know, really looking at our own scorpionic consciousness, which is, you know, our experiences of our relationship to loss, our relationship to power, exposing abuses of power, exposing, you know, any toxicity in our environment, cleansing toxicity out of our environment, any areas where we're not able to actually embody our true empowerment will be exposed, so that we can harness our empowerment, as well as really step into embodying our soul and our own true empowerment. And as that relates to, you know, our own sense of self-love, self-value, and then, you know, what we love, who we love, and what we value, who we value, things like that, and what we see as valuable. And another piece that I think is really interesting and important to know is that Saturn in Aquarius has been squaring Uranus and Taurus this entire year. Really, it's been within what's called within orb, so within a specific degrees in the sky that we would consider a square. And that square is always going to mean there's different types of squares. This is called the last quarter square, and this is really actually kind of showing this pressure in the outside world between the past and the future. So between our past and what we valued in the past And you know, how we loved in the past, how we magnetize things to us in the past, can be about resources as well. And then, you know, how we're actually being pulled into some future becoming. So this is going to be the last exact square. I believe it's on December 24th. And so this is really, you know, after that exact square, it's going to start easing up, and it's going to be time to actually really step into this future becoming. And so recognize, you know, what's coming up for you and for all of us in the collective in this month of December. You know, we're getting an opportunity to really look at, you know, what we'd actually have valued in the past, because Venus is in Capricorn, is actually, it's going to conjunct Pluto. It's really in process of actually coming very, very close to Pluto, which is called the conjunction, and then it retrogrades back over Pluto. And this is going to be likely, you know, when Venus is touching Pluto, it's going to actually show, or it's going to expose, you know, what is it that needs to kind of die off in our lives, and the way in which we relate to ourselves and others, you know, or even anything Venusian. So again, that can mean like what we value. So resources as well. It's like, what is it that from our past that just no longer resonates with us? What needs to be dismantled in our lives so that we can step into the embodiment of our updated values, you know, our updated sense of self-love as well. You know, are there things that we've inherited from our family lines, from our relationships of our past, that just no longer resonates anymore? It doesn't resonate with our own sense of self-value and self-love and what we desire to embody on the earth plane. So this Venus retrograde is really helping us to actually dismantle those things, to let go of those things, let that process, you know, that has been in the past, you know, die off, let it go, so that when we come into this new trajectory in really looking at and funneling our focus and our evolution and the embodiment of our own Taurus energy and Scorpio energy, really taking a look at that in our own emotional, I would say emotional attachments to those energies, but also emotional evolution in that particular function of consciousness, Taurus and Scorpio. As we move into that, we're ready because we've done that work in the Venus retrograde time frame. And then March 3rd of 2022, there's a very, very important conjunction, which means a seed point with Mars, Pluto, which both are planetary guides to Scorpio energy, which will be the south node of the moon at that point, and Venus, which is the planetary guide to Taurus, which will be the north node of the moon at that point. So this is our evolutionary trajectory. So there's a seed point happening with Mars, Venus, and Pluto. This is what's so awesome about the fact that Julissa brought this up about our Mars and Venus energy, because this is our masculine and feminine getting a new seed point. So we can actually be seeding new karma, because it's in Capricorn, which is the archetypal energy that is related to karma, and new chapters that we're creating, new structures of consciousness, because Capricorn is about how we structure our reality, how we structure consciousness. So March 3rd of 2022 is an incredible seed point with our masculine energy and our feminine energy, our Mars energy, how we get what we want, how we go out there and get it, and Venus, what we love, what we actually do want, right? They're coming together, and they're actually seeding something. And then it's also conjunct Pluto, and Pluto is our power. So these three coming together March 3rd are just so powerful. It is so helpful for us, I believe, to know this, because we can really set intentions for ourselves. This is how I want to engage what I love and desire in the world. This is the action I'm going to take in my devotion to what I love and desire in the world, and what I wish to embody in the world, and what I wish to build, which is a Capricorn thing. What do I wish to build on the earth plane? in my reality, and then in also contributing in society, which is also a Capricorn theme. So from now all the way until March is these transits are so incredible in what we can actually, if we know that this is happening, then we can consciously work with them and actually really commit to our own masculine, our own feminine, what we desire to embody, and this true empowerment in our own reality, building the reality we wish in the world, and then of course in contribution to the world.
Yeah, I love the way you're describing all that too, and it makes total sense on why it's important for us as individuals to be aware of these planetary alignments and different energies happening. I mean, because it would behoove us to know, hey, like you said, on March 3rd here, 2022, it's kind of a big deal. So yeah, we should pay attention to that kind of thing on lots of levels, and all these other dates from the 24th you had said. So that's what I was asking earlier too, is there, hey, let's make it easy. One calendar online that says, focus on love intention on this day. But I know it's a bigger picture than that.
Every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, good for that. Okay. On that one, yes, you got me on there. But yeah, that's really interesting hearing you describe it that way. Did you have any questions, Alyssa?
Well, so is what's happening now, is it typical for it to be this time of year? So everything's, winter, things are becoming dormant, the leaves are falling from the trees, and then, everything to start to move towards spring and growth. So what's happening now, is it typical, every year? Is like the New Year's resolutions? Or is this just a really major one compared to years previously?
Yeah, every year is a little bit different because the planets are always moving, and they're naturally, unfolding these energies. And I wanted to say, because Derek has been talking about the chakras, a lot of people don't realize too that the chakras are connected to the planetary energies. So like the root chakra is connected to Pluto, Saturn, and Uranus. So when we're getting those transits in our chart, it's opening up those chakras. It's moving the energy, it's opening it up so that we can actually evolve it, right? And so, the planets are always moving. We're always getting these opportunities. It's just that they're in like specific ways. Now, like you speak to the seasons, and yes, when we come into Scorpio season, Sagittarius season, and then Capricorn, right? This is winter for us, and so this is for us in this area of the world. This is the time that there's just this natural dying off of what we've created since last spring. We created it in the spring, meaning like we seeded it. It actually grew through the season of spring and summer, and then we harvested it, and now it's coming back inward. It's actually we're naturally coming inward and really allowing things to go through the process of this natural letting go, right? And then we'll come into spring and we'll be seeding again, right? So in that sense, we're always doing this cyclically throughout the year. But these specific transits are very specific to this year. They don't happen like this a lot. And I will say, for Mars and Venus and Pluto to all come together in March at the same degree is really fascinating. And I will say as well that it's fascinating because the United States, so every country has a birth chart. And, so when it became a country, all the planets were in the sky at a specific point. So we can draw the birth chart for the country. And you can follow the transits with that birth chart just like you can an individual. And you see that it works. These transits are like happening for the country, just like it's happening for individuals when there's planetary contact to the placements of the birth chart. So this country, the United States, is actually coming up to its Pluto return in February. So this is why we've been experiencing a lot of exposing of, abuses of power and what's going on with the institutions and in society and in laws and politically, and, in society just in general. The consciousness has been being exposed in the last few years because Pluto, when it's approaching an exact aspect in a birth chart, it's actually, it's building momentum, and Pluto always wants to expose where it is we're not harnessing our power, where it is we're experiencing losses of power, so that we're aware, so that we can dismantle the things that are not empowering us, so that we can come into our true empowerment. Now, Pluto's been approaching the natal Pluto of the United States for a few years now. We've been feeling it, and those things are being exposed. There's been a lot of chaos. And what's going to happen is in February, it will make its exact conjunction. And so this is another really exciting thing about that Mars, Venus, and Pluto seed point that's happening March 3rd, is it happens to be that it's happening on the natal placement of Pluto of this country. So this can be very much a seed point for the United States as well. And so this is particularly, if you're living in the United States, this is particularly an important date. Because it is a seed point for the country itself, a very prominent seed point. And this is a 248-year cycle, so this is a big cycle that's going to begin here very soon. So it's finishing and beginning again. So this is a very special seed point that's coming, and not just for this country, but for anyone individually, because Mars, Venus, and Pluto don't come together like this in a conjunction like this often. And so I will say, I've been studying astrology since 2010, every day I've been watching it, and there's always something significant going on. And there are times that are a little less, maybe less of intensity, but it just seems like there's always something that is actually really pressuring us to evolve and get to the next level. So in that sense, there's always something you can be following to really harness the energy, where it could be, a great evolutionary leap. But there are some times that it's like particularly important. Or I don't know if I like the word important, but it's particularly prominent, let's just say. And I would say between, really back in 2020 was very prominent for a lot of reasons, which I'm happy to explain if we want to go into that detail. But 2020 was very important karmically for everyone, collectively, individually, but also in this country. And then, now we're coming up to a pretty prominent part for this country, but also for ourselves. This last year has been like a bridge year between the past and the future. And I think that this coming year is really seeding more into the future. And that's why I think that this Venus retrograde is really important right now, because it's going to actually, it's asking us to do the work so that we're ready to really seed this new becoming that's happening for us. So,
yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. And yeah, I believe that you're right. I mean, look what the way the world is right now. So not just our country, but our world has experienced this. We're as a collective. Did you have any input?
No, I actually appreciate how the whole discussion is going in the call, because we're talking energies, and of course we're in an energy universe, so it's all important. As you just made the comment a few moments ago, every moment's important too. So, and I'd say, and you stumbled on your words because you were hesitant to say something about maybe greater energies. I forget how you exactly worded it, but I would say beneficial energies to focus on at that time for different reasons. So, yeah, it's all a perspective thing. So, I guess certain planetary alignments, like you were just talking about with Jupiter and the different ones right now that are happening that don't happen that often. yeah, it's like take advantage of when the ice cream man's coming through the cul-de-sac. Go, get your goods while you can. And again, it's a tough thing to talk about. A lot of this, isn't it? Because when you're in a heightened energetic environment, let's say, and that can be tied to planetary alignments, well, certain chakras will be less restricted and able to be worked out some more. So you can expand in those times. So it's always beneficial, but sometimes more beneficial for certain parts or aspects of us, I guess is one way of putting it. Does that make sense to you, Alisé?
Yes, and one of the things that I wanted to be sure to mention is that what's really wonderful about understanding what I like about understanding through the astrological perspective. However, I really believe that for evolution, it's really helpful to look from different angles and different tools. There's so many different tools that can actually help us be able to see the bigger picture. But one of the things I love about astrology is that the thing about evolution is that we don't know what we don't know. And so we can get into these habits of perception. And so things can be happening. So like the seed point, for example, of Mars, Venus, and Pluto, if you don't know that that's happening, it's very easy to not see the opportunity, because it's, no matter what, we're going to be attracting what we need to evolve. And yet we can also keep repeating the same patterns because of a few things. One is that we as humans like to be comfortable, and we actually really have this tendency for emotional security. And so typically we will repeat past patterns. We will repeat the past because we know we survived the past. Even if the past is getting uncomfortable or stale, or it's not working for us anymore, it can be confusing because we're like, well, this worked in the past, why isn't it working now? But it's because we outgrow things, and where we're moving into, whenever we're growing, whenever we're evolving, it actually has us have to walk with our fear of the unknown. We have to walk with the emotional insecurity of what we don't know. We don't know how things are going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where we're going because we haven't been there yet, because that's what evolution is. So this is why I love astrology, because it can actually help really be able to look at these things objectively, look at the transits, look and see what it's presenting to you, and then you can harness the energy that's there so that you are able to effectively actually use the energy that's there for you, which you may not be able to see because we're such, the human being is, we just have this part of us that likes to feel emotionally secure, and typically will project the past onto what is present. But there could be so much opportunities in the present that we don't even see because we're just projecting kind of this, what we already know. We're projecting this perception that we're used to, we're inclined to. It's habits. I like to call it habits of perception. We all have them. This is a natural function of our brain to actually be like, oh, I know what to do with that. I know what to do with that piece of information. But our brain is picking up, like, I think thousands of pieces of information, but we're only conscious of like very, very small percentage of it. And so it's like our brain naturally has to function on the earth plane. So our brain will like, perceive things and kind of like, if we don't catch ourselves, we can actually kind of project something happening that's actually that's actually, we're not even seeing the opportunities being presented to us that are actually like awakening us to like the next level. And, maybe even our next level reality. I mean, I like to look at things as the universe is holographic too. So it's like, we can, I don't know, I feel like we can kind of see these transits as giving us the opportunity as like, do you want to go through a new door? Do you want to like experience this potential? like this new way of relating, or this new way of perceiving, or this, no, but we have to be able to see it. And so this is why I love astrology, because when you're following your own transits, or you're following the transits, and then you're looking at your chart, you're familiar with your chart, you're also, you know, familiar with some of the habits of perception that are really, it shows in your chart, and things like that. You can actually learn how to actually unlock yourself from specific patterns of perceptions, specific patterns of relating, or, you know, really learning how to harness the energy and get to that next level when Venus goes retrograde. Now, how is Venus retrograde aspecting your natal Venus? That's going to show you where you're getting opportunities that you may not even realize if you didn't know what was there, right? So, yeah, it's fascinating.
That was really beautiful how you put that. Just open to experiencing another path. That's so amazing. But I wanted to give a quick shout out. We have someone on chat by the name, on YouTube chat, Green Smoke. So that is actually our friend Alex, who does some of our wire wrapping, or actually most of our really cool wire wrapping. So I'm like, I haven't been wanting to show my my Selenite wand, but I guess I will go ahead and show you because it's sitting right here. So I don't know if you can see that. Can you see it on camera yet?
Probably. It should be in sync with your voice anyway.
Oh,
yeah, it's phenomenal. So what you're seeing there, Alisé, is a selenite, and the viewers, a selenite wand that Alex wrapped, and that's a piece of shungite in the middle, and it says love on there. He actually managed somehow, in cursive, to wire wrap the word love across her shungite oval on the wand there. And that's a crystal point that he gathered himself. Phenomenal individual, fantastic artist. So his stuff is your mystical wares, but yeah, I just want to give a shout out to him because.
Oh, I have this too. Why not?
And a big chunk of shungite that he actually wrapped a copper tree on as well. And that's a whole nother. And I have one here. You can't quite see probably, but on my desk as well. I have one of those.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex is phenomenal.
No, but we are running short on time, so I did want to say, Alisé, she has been a part of some of our fairs, and we are so excited to have her back again. This coming Saturday, December 11th, we have our metaphysical fair here at Mystical Wares store in Mount Vernon, Washington. And she will be back again the following fair, which is Saturday, December 18th. So we're excited to have you back. Did you want to talk a little bit about how people can find you, Alisé?
Sure. So I have a website. It's called knowthyselfandheal.com. So you can find information about me, what I offer there. I'm also on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. It's Alisé Préjéan, Astrology and Healing Arts. And I do write-ups about the current planetary transits on there. And on my personal page, it's Alisé, and I do daily lives where I talk about the current planetary transits as well. I've given myself a 365-day challenge to go live every day on my personal page and talk about astrology. So that's super fun. I always find new things to talk about there. So you can find me there. And then my email address is knowthyselfandheal@gmail.com. So you're welcome to find me there as well if you would like to contact me and book a reading or learn more about how to connect with your own chart, birth chart. So
yeah, we'll put a link to your website in the show notes as well for the viewers and listeners later. And actually, I just saw in the comments there, Jalissa, somebody put a comment, and I'm trying on my glasses, but wouldn't it be fun to see the chart of mystical wares?
I'm glad you saw that, because I was going to say, yes, we'll have to have you do a birth chart for mystical wares.
Yep.
Yes. That would be so fun. And then you can follow the transits for the chart of mystical wares and see what happens at mystical wares when these transits are happening.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's fun. It's a good idea. Yeah, I'm glad somebody suggested that. And well, again, so actually, you've answered all my questions and then given me so many more to ask you. So for another time, of course. But no, I really appreciate you being here. thank you very much.
Yeah, we had another person that commented that I love that the universe is holographic, and I agree. When you're explaining that, I'm like, yes. And then as you're talking about that, Derek has these pictures going through the live video, and it was a toroidal shape or donut. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was beautiful how it all played out too while you were explaining that, and that popped in. And
that happened a few times while she was speaking regarding the images here. So again, for those that are on the video broadcast of this, we do have some images cycling through. And it happened a few times, but during while she was speaking, little toroidal energy flows going, and yeah, it was kind of synchronistic there. So it was awesome to see.
So Alisé, I know, are you a massage therapist as well?
I am. Yeah, I've been practicing massage. Let's see, like since 2002. Actually, really 1998 is when I went to school for massage, and yeah, so I've been doing it for quite a while.
So you are a healer. Are you also a Reiki master or trained?
You know, I am amazed that I haven't taken a Reiki class yet. I've gotten the feedback a lot that people ask me when I've given them massage if I do Reiki, because they were experiencing all these colors and all that, and I was like, no, I've never taken Reiki. I kind of can't believe I haven't. And in fact, I was going to, but then the pandemic happened, so I wasn't able to take the class I wanted to take. So, but it's just fascinated me, because I remember this one woman, she said, you know, my mother's a Reiki master, and you know, I totally thought that you must be a Reiki master. I said, no. So yeah, I don't do Reiki, but I'm trained in regression therapy. Some people call it past life regression, and you know, that's a really, really potent tool as well, or a healing modality. It really works with trauma. So you know, everyone has experienced trauma in some way, shape, or form. You can see the trauma signatures in the chart, so where it is we naturally attract trauma. And so I studied with Patricia Walsh, who is a deep memory process practitioner, so it's a specific technique for doing regression, and it really helps to work with trauma that's held in the cellular memory. And so that technique is really amazing. I spent like 5 years studying with her, and so I do that. And I went to nutrition school, and I don't necessarily do nutrition counseling, but I always bring it in to whatever I'm doing. If the situation arises, I really love the perspective that I learned about nutrition, that it's, you know, not just what food we're consuming, but what kind of information we're consuming, what we're consuming in our relationships, and, you know, everything that all of our senses are consuming. The visuals as well. You know, this is all information that we're consuming. And so in this nutrition program I did, I got to learn, you know, how to work with that, how to actually recognize that we're really having to digest consciousness and whatever ways it's coming in through our senses. And so I always do like to bring that in if it's appropriate in any of my sessions.
Hate to break in here, but we got 1 minute.
Oh,
we appreciate that, Nancy. Yeah, Nancy's great at keeping us, because she is the only timer and clock. Yeah.
all right.
I have no idea. No.
No, that was great, but like we always say, you don't have to be Reiki trained to be, you know, energy healing, because you obviously do that already.
Yeah, we're all energy workers.
Yeah, we're all natural healers.
Well, I guess we can wrap it up, and I'm going to thank you again. I appreciate you being here. It was a fascinating talk. I hope that the viewers and listeners found some you know, breadcrumbs of information, and I'm sure they found probably a whole loaf of bread in there, because there's a lot of information that was fantastic. And I'm going to listen to it again myself and jot down some of these dates I didn't quite grab. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody listening.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.